Hello everyone. From Studio A at the USC Annenberg School, this is Aadi Weber, your host from the Paradigm Podcast. Today, we are speaking to Congxing Tsai, the founder of Synco AI, a personalized AI assistant for interviews. Congxing was previously a research staff member at USC's Information Sciences Institute before joining Google in 2011. He witnessed Google's growth in LA and later joined Snapchat, where he led their engineering teams in San Francisco. With over 10 years of experience as a hiring manager, he is currently building Synco, dedicated to helping students find jobs. With that, please welcome our guest, Congxing Tsai. Hi, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for coming back to USC. I know you've been here quite a few times already. But yeah, I would like to just start off by having you sort of introduce yourself and telling us a bit about what you do and maybe a little bit about your professional career so far.
Yeah, it's so happy to be back on this campus. So there's a lot of great memories between me and my wife. We spent some of the best years at USC.
Yeah, and a lot has changed, right? Like it looks totally different.
Things changed so much. We were here for she was here doing her PhD. I was a research member at USC Information Science Institute, part of the Whitby Engineering School. And then I left USC and joined Google in 2011. So when Google ARA was still a small office in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
So we have seen the office growing really quickly. Like now it's in Venice, have a huge office space there. And then, after the mobile become popular, I jumped into the mobile startup wave, like a bunch of startups. Later, I was helping Snapchat growing, by building their San Francisco offices, like working on stories and discover product. I run the engineering offices there. So have been always fascinating for using AI to helping people communicate. And then, that's why I'm starting this AI startup, to helping people better communicating and in job seeking and creating more opportunities for people.
Awesome. So yeah, you just mentioned your entire sort of journey in a nutshell, but you kind of ended off on talking a little bit about the startup that you're building. Would you mind just telling us like what it is, sort of how it functions, and how you kind of like expect it to help people?
Yeah, so it's named the Synco AI. So Synco is like a sync and coordinate. Synco communication. So it's imagine you have like a magic notepad that you can take in, remembers everything you have done for your interview and everything we have done for you. So you can take it to an interview and it listens and watches how the interview goes and give you real-time support.
Wow.
And after that, it will help you reflect and prepare for the next interview.
Wow.
So that's what Synco is.
Okay, that's really interesting. How did you sort of come up with this idea?
So I feel like we have always while building Snapchat, we have already learned that AI can helping people better express themselves.
Sure.
And then imagine what has happened in the last 10 years from Instagram, Snapchat, how camera turning people into a self-broadcasting, agent everywhere, right? And then it also creates a lot of opportunities for a lot of people. So I think, we just see AI as the technology. It will help more people better express themselves. Sure. And that will in turn to helping people having more opportunities. So if you're looking at all the common pain point for students looking for jobs, it's easier I have tried so much, I haven't heard anything back, from, companies.
Yeah.
I had no interview.
Sure.
Or I have tried so many I failed so many interviews. I still don't know why I failed.
Sure.
Or I don't know how to act in a job interview. So all this is an indication that the students or the job seeker haven't been trained to communicate well. Sure. In a very intense setup. Right.
Sure.
So that's where we do feel AI could become super powerful, similar to how camera make everyone, smartphone camera, turn everyone to be, expressive on social media.
Sure.
That's where we kind of find the angle and we decided to give it a try.
Awesome. Do you think you could kind of break down the technical sort of components of how this works without getting too technical, because some people are really interested to know the technology and how it sort of functions, but don't understand all of the vernacular that sort of comes with it. So do you think you could just kind of give a an overview, breakdown.
Yeah, I think Synco, the technology is really like four part: the UI, the data part, and then the AI part, and also the personalization part.
Yes.
So for the UX part, it's very simple. It's like a notepad, right? So you can bring it into your interview. It feels like it runs on the background. Like no one will be interrupt. You can open it at any time, so it will just be there for you.
And this is all like for virtual interviews.
It's all for online interviews.
Okay.
Yes. So you could bring it to a real interview, but just weird, when you open your laptop.
Sure, it's a little bizarre. I don't think anyone would get hired in that
way. you can definitely do it. I feel like there's
Sure.
nothing prevent you to do that, but it's really running on a Mac computer on the background, so you can it will running silently on the background. It's like a notepad you open.
Sure.
And it remembers everything. And the second part is the data. Right. The data part is that it includes. So one of the biggest thing in this era is AI has a much big computational power. So it can consume way more data than before. So that's a very great given, right? So now the notepad knows. First, it knows a lot of data about you. So anything you have done, like your resume, your research, like the note you prepared for this job. So that's private to you. And then there's data we collected for you. So we go online, research the company, research the job, researching other people sharing about their job experiences at the place. So the data we collected for you. And then a more interesting thing is the data. A lot of data we couldn't consume in the past. Now we can consume it. So our model has been watching thousands of hours of mock interview on YouTube.
Oh wow!
So which is probably you. If there's no AI, you probably have to watching that yourself. For thousands of hours before you can feel confident. I can go to an interview. So now, the AI can watching those interviews for you and distill very useful information for your need. Right. So that's the second part, which is data. And then the third part is definitely AI, right? So it's a multi-agent, AI system. So imagine, there are several AI working in parallel when you are going to this interview, right? There's AI does the research for you. It goes online, like looking for any information you need on your hand for you to use at the moment. And there's AI listening to the conversation and then trying to see, maybe some question will help you to better, answer or join the conversation, right? And then there's this, other AI which is more built on top of interview, histories, right? Constructing knowledge base and better answer the questions. And then there's also training, AI where it helps you practice, show you previously how you did,
So everything. Personalized sort of feedback.
Yes. So it's like many AI leveraging, focusing on very different perspectives. And then observe and then changing their behavior and then collecting data and working with each other on the background. And then the fourth is the personalization aspect because it's using your data, right? It dig out your stories and then saying, hey, if you want to show your leadership skill, right? There's this moment in your past that is a great example where you can drill into, right? So that will, so basically, it's like your massive notes you have collected, and now it's
just compiled
together into
and
one
analyzed.
Yeah, one tool.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And so you kind of mentioned that the model was trained off of thousands of hours off of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you sort of used to train the model? Anything of note? Anything in particular?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of already compiled good interview materials online, right? Interview banks, question banks, and interview tips, and a lot of well-written, books on how to, behave in your interview.
Sure.
There's also great things, less about interview, just more about communication, right? How do you tell a story? How do you answer a question? How do you, present yourself? And then some technical fact, which AI probably is already good about, So I think the tool is, instead of viewing that as a tool, what it does for you, instead of giving you the right answer, you can rely on saying it's reduce your burden to memorizing a lot of things. So now you can just be in the interview, be present in the interview, and be yourself. and using interview as just the opportunity to learn and then to improve.
Interesting. Okay, and so I'm curious, what stage is your startup in? How long have you, been existing for, and where are you sort of at now?
Yes, so we started the company in 2021. The idea was to using AI to create opportunities. So we call it generated serendipity, where we think if AI continuously improve at the current phase, we
Sure.
think it will completely changing how people expressing themselves, how people present themselves online. And then with the power of computation, we can not only connecting people, but also creating opportunities for them. So we built several different products where mostly focusing on the camera end, like helping people to expressing and generating interesting content for social media. And then it's this summer we come up with the idea where because we felt there's a growing need. We have several interns in our team, from UC Berkeley and Stanford,
Okay.
and everyone has this feeling like the most networking need is a job
Sure.
in this market, right? So we felt like we can not only we don't necessarily have to just creating AI for self-expression for fun. We can use it for job, for
Sure.
something more serious. So we actually it's a bunch of the intern and us designed the product this summer.
Oh, wow.
And then we just start from the idea and the designing and the building everything in 3 months. And then
Wow.
now we are trying to show people around campus, like letting people give it a
Sure.
try. And we have already used it for hundreds of mock interviews already. It's just everyone who use it will coming back feel like, I have to bring it next time to another
Wow.
interview.
Interesting. That's a very quick turnaround. I don't know how you managed to do that, but that's awesome. I guess, yeah, I mean, all of these things that you're describing sound, very useful, very real world application oriented. I guess I'm sort of wondering, and, I'm sure other people have maybe brought it up before, sort of like the ethics behind your platform. I'm sure you have heard a couple of things in regards to that. But I'm just curious because, like, when I hear your idea, I mean, it sounds amazing. I'm wondering, do you see it as sort of like a cheat sheet for interviews? Do you think that's sort of the overall approach to it?
Yeah, I think, almost anyone, like, probably, I would say 8 out of 10 people I talk to about this idea, everyone's first reaction is that, oh, is that cheating?
Okay, so that's a very normal. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah,
here. Okay.
It's like almost everyone is feeling that way. But I think it's a. I mean, I have been using this and then trying this for so many times now, and I felt the question is very similar, to the old question which we discussed more often last year, is that can you using ChatGPT for your homework? I think that's the exact same question, So my takeaway is that if you're just to copy whatever ChatGPT tells you for your homework, so
Sure.
there's a very low chance you could getting a good grade or even pass the exam, in my opinion, because the answer is always so machinery, so robotic, like you
Sure.
cannot use it as an answer. But if you don't use it at all in your research or in your work, then you also will feel like you're hardly catching up with your peers who are leveraging AI in their study, in their research. I think that's the same thing for me, to looking at Synco in job interview as well. So you cannot rely on it to
Sure.
pass the interview. It's more, helping you, like removing a lot of, like burdens of memory facts, like making you more confident, and as a tool for you to learn from interview and do research, comparing to saying, hey, this is a deceit tool, so you can just don't do anything, just read out the answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I sort of see. Well, first of all, I just want to disclose AI is not okay to use in the academic setting in terms of classes and whatnot. But I know a lot of researchers use AI for their research. But when I think of your platform, it seems like the AI that is used is a sort of a snapshot for an employer to sort of see. When I think of like researchers, I think they use AI for months and months or maybe even years of research. But when I see or when I think of like your platform, I'm thinking like maybe employers would feel like they have been sort of tricked perhaps into hiring someone who might be underqualified, just because it's a short amount of time and someone is presenting themselves with a certain sort of image. So I'm just sort of wondering, like, do you see it that way, or do you think it still applies?
Yeah, I think it will take a while for people to realizing actually they can using this tool to find better people. So the best analogy I have is that imagine the AI tool is an amplifier, right? And then when you're hiring people, you're trying to finding gold in the sand. And then when you're using the amplifier, you're finding it faster,
Sure,
instead of slower, right? And you do feel, but there's definitely some changes or some disciplines are required on the hiring side as well. So when I was at Google at early times, there was this saying about interviewing is a really tough job because your goal is to say, how can I identify the strengths of this candidate in 1 hour, less than an hour, right? So everyone has a lot of weakness. And then it's interviewer's job to explore the different areas and to quickly spot, like where the strength of this candidate is. But you don't have a lot of qualified interviewers in the market right now. There's a lot of people who don't, treating, it's very lazy during the interview. They're asking a fact question. If you can answer it, yeah, well, you passed this interview. If you don't remember the answer, you failed it.
Sure.
So it's more become a closed exam, in some way.
Sure.
So that I think for those ones, to me, is that there's no meaning to asking those questions, right? Like I ask you how to do something which you can just quickly search online to get that answer. Why do I test you for that interview question? I should ask you something more personal, more to you about your strengths to get to know you, right? So I think the tool is going to force the companies to really shifting their job interview processes to be more personal and to be more focused on the getting to know the candidate instead of worry too much about do you remember this fact from textbook, or do you have you done this something like that. That's what my take is.
Sure. So do you see Synco AI as sort of giving advice for like the more behavioral questions as well as the technical questions, or where does that sort of provide some sort of comfort for people?
I think it depends on the person because it's personalized, right? For example,
but it can do either.
It can do either. So for me, I'm very experienced. Like if I go to a job interview for a technical position,
Sure.
I have done a lot of large projects before, but I don't remember a lot of the textbook details.
Sure.
I was very far away from school, so I forgot a lot of the details.
Sure.
So when I'm answering those questions, if I just need to glance at Synco's reminder, I will just quickly know, oh, this is going to be the approach I'm going to use, right? And then, but I will getting deep into the questions, or getting deep into the details to show my experiences and show my insight. And I can imagine an international student or when I was younger, myself, I was less trained on communication, especially in a different language, right? Like I was more in technical, so I probably have a lot of fresh knowledge in my mind. But when people asking me to tell a story in my life, and then I would just stumble on that, like where do I start? Like which story should I pick? And then that is a lot of times the challenge I was, facing at that time. And I think Synco can, for those questions, will provide you a structure saying, hey, there's a few moments you could, in your resume, you could bring it up, and here's the structure. How do you tell the story? I think that will. So I interviewed several interviewers after I launched this tool, and we did some mock interview. I asked them, by knowing the person using this tool, by seeing what the Synco recommended, did you feel the tool changed your decision, your final decision? And I think most of this experience, the hiring manager told me, it didn't change their decision. It just helped them to realizing whether they want this person faster. Because their decision is never about, do you know this or do you know that? Their decision is always saying, do I see your experiences?
Interesting. So you sort of see it as a tool to allow people to showcase themselves in the best way possible instead of just giving them a cheat sheet, for lack of a better
because there's no
analogy.
cheat sheet for interview.
Sure.
Right? I'm hiring you because I want to know, are you going to be good at this job? And then I'm trying to find a person. So there's no cheat sheet to any answer I have. It's more about, do I know you, right? Can I know your strengths, right? And I'm making my best bet or guess on
Sure.
the communication. And then I think the tool is mostly just make you more confident and help you going back, improving yourself.
Sure.
And then it's more like letting you present yourself better, so I
Sure.
can see it clearly, right? Comparing to saying there is such thing which has a correct answer to the question, and
Sure.
then AI has it.
So I imagine that, I mean, you've spoken to, I'm sure, many employers, prospective employees. I'm sure that a lot of them do sort of see this vision and agree with you, but I'm also sure that there's some who probably don't.
Of course.
I mean, anytime there's innovation, you're going to have some pushback. And in this case, I'm just wondering, do you think that there could be any sort of unintended consequences with your platform? Perhaps employers start moving to more in-person interviews. There are more checks to make sure there's no AI running in the background, those sort of like technological developments.
Yeah, so I talked to a lot of, so this is already happening, right? So there's people, employers are very nervous saying, they were thinking, oh, there's so many people are using AI these days, like we have to, they start to panic, right? They start to say, hey, we have to strengthen our interview process, right? But there's also a lot of interviewers knowing that saying, I don't think it's effective, right? So, as far as we are keep our interviewing, we can spot who is good, who is not, right? So it's definitely going to be a very, very messy ground, in the job market right now. And I think everyone is agreeing on one thing. There's no way to go back. It's like there's no way to go back before ChatGPT is invented.
Sure.
Right? Like nowadays, people can just using ChatGPT to do a lot of things, and you couldn't tell them saying, hey, you cannot even use it, right? So it's already here. So everyone has access to the technology right now.
Sure.
And it's almost impossible to detect. So from the technology perspective, so it's almost impossible to detect. And so I think the question to me is more the side effect at this point is that it will give certain people unbalanced, it will creating some kind of a messiness, for it will give some certain people some edge, on the job interview process. So they will have unfair advantage, in this practice, especially to companies who are not adapting their interview process into more in-person, like communication focus, like strengths-based discovery. So I think that's definitely the case. But I think companies will learn from it. They will adapt. Like I have already hearing some companies telling me because of this remote interview, so their candidate quality is dropping significantly over time. So they are also thinking about how to improving that. But my best prediction from my perspective is that what will happen out from this is that everyone is going to raising the bar. Right?
Interesting.
So the bar will be raised. So once the bar will be raised, it will mean that it will be the use of AI will be taken into consideration. So it will assume you are using AI, but the bar will be higher than before.
So you're saying essentially those who don't, leverage AI will be at a disadvantage. You believe, you foresee, perhaps?
I think that's for sure.
Okay.
Like it's 20 years ago, when I was in school. Anyone who is good at Google search, who is better at Google search, they enjoy a fascinating career after that. And then nowadays, everyone has to using Google as part of their study or research, right?
Sure.
And that time, Google's skill is basically some kind of indicator of your career growth down the road. I think it's the same thing today, right? Like you feel AI is new here, but I do think your skill with AI will eventually determine your height of your career.
Interesting, because I think that with every sort of innovation, whether it's tech or whatnot, I think it takes time for people to adjust. And I think that, everybody is kind of opposed to it at first, and then over time you can start to sort of see an overall like change in the environment. But when it comes to AI, I think that I've heard a lot of criticism of AI. Obviously, everyone's talking about AI all of the time.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
but I've heard that when it comes to AI, people think that it might sort of disrupt critical thinking. It might sort of it's a different sort of change. It's not like anything that we've ever seen before. So do you sort of agree with that like AI sentiment, or do you think that no, it's just another development? It's like what we've seen before, just in a different form.
To me, I think people are that's sentiment. I can obviously feel it. When people haven't really delved into the technology. It's both a overestimate and underestimate of what AI is capable of doing. So my takeaway is that if you're looking at what AI speed out of any random questions, it's full of problem, right?
Sure.
So it probably requires more critical thinking for it
To
to be
filter through the AI itself.
to be really useful, right? And I do think it saves a lot of simple work. Like some of the things which you feel like you have to, like hardly going through, like memory, or like it makes a lot of other things easier along the process. Like saying, hey, can I making this sentence look better, right? Can I tell this, like idea in an
Sure.
easier to understandable way? So I think those tasks will become simpler. So I do feel it's just another tool in people's hands, and it will require more critical thinking and require a much more better trained skill set to leveraging the throughput
Right.
AI empowered.
It's interesting because you mentioned it takes sort of time, I guess, to filter through that sort of,
Yeah.
mistake riddled answers that, sometimes AI can produce. But with your app, for example, it's all like real time sort of generation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in an interview, you don't really have time to like filter through some of that, right? Like you have to give it a response immediately.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of mitigate that sort of, mistake driven, response?
So I think Synco was designed as a learning tool. It's fundamentally is a notepad. It's your learning tool. So the idea is less about, hey, there's an answer provided for you during the interview. It's more like now there's a notepad tracks how you learn and how you behave, and using every interview as an opportunity.
Sure.
So
Well, that's just one component of it, correct?
yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's just part
So
of it.
basically, it takes everything. So over time, the notepad is basically it's an interface to all the daily effort or practice or your learning or your past interview in one place. And then when it gives you a suggestion, it's more, it's something where it's fitted to how you are going to. It's more just a reminder, right? And then you can easily I can easily tell, oh, it misses something, right? I can drive the conversation along the direction. It will remind me something, but it will misses something. So I will continue drive the conversation as the interview goes.
Sure.
And AI will refine its answer as it goes. So I think that's where is instead of as a proxy for interview, it's more like an amplifier for you. So it just make you present more out of yourself in a very short time frame.
Do you think that it's sort of applicable to multiple people across multiple demographics, or do you think that your platform is specifically tailored for a certain type of person, like an undergrad who, for instance, just graduated and is looking for their first job, but is very tech savvy, so knows how to sort of filter through visually the mistakes that AI can make, and utilize your platform to do better in an interview? Or do you think it has sort of an application to multiple people, despite tech knowledge or not?
I think it's always benefiting younger people. Any new technology will benefiting like younger people more, like naturally, But it doesn't
Sure.
mean this always has to be the younger people who master the technology, right? There's a lot of people in the job market already. Senior people, they already see the power, so they are using AI as their like a daily tool. But I do think younger people has a more nature way of embracing new things, and then they will start to, instead of have a bias about, oh, I think the technology is this way. They are more like, let me try it. Right. Once you
Sure.
try it, you are realizing, oh, it's not exactly like how people talking about it. Right.
I sort of wish I could try your platform. I have a Dell. I don't have a Mac. And do you think you're gonna like open it up to other people that don't have Apple products or
Yeah. So we that's definitely like the plan. So
what's the plan?
right
Okay.
now it's mostly designed for Mac. Mostly because we are a very small team and we are building this, we also wanted the experiences to be super smooth, and
Sure.
like we have been building Apple apps like for a few years, and it has a very nice ecosystem and has a very very seamless integration with the product. So if people having a Mac, I thought they will love the product,
Sure.
and it's just it's more like a very very beautiful notepad that you can open during any interview or any meeting that is a high stake meeting for you.
Interesting. And so you said that your team consists primarily of undergraduates at UC Berkeley and Stanford, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm curious sort of like what their thoughts are on this and maybe what their peers' thoughts are. I don't know if you've surveyed I mean, I know you said you go around the campuses and have people just try it out.
Yeah.
But have you gotten like sort of opinions on, like the ethical implications of this, or have you spoken to professors about this perhaps?
So we didn't talk to professors that much though. We talked to a lot of students, and I think this idea was like the students' idea. We discussed the several different directions, and this is the one people love the most, right? Because I don't think like I think if I tell you there's this such tool, and out of the box, everyone has the first reaction. This is, oh, does that sounds like cheating, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using AI daily, if ChatGPT is your like daily working tool, it's like something you rely heavily every day, you probably won't have that like feeling at all. You will just feel this is another tool, and it will give you advantage. I'm still me, right?
Sure.
I'm still that person. Now I'm just super empowered.
Is this what like the students have told you?
Yeah. This is like how they feel. They love it, and then in some way they rank the most important feature is really the feedback, not the real-time suggestion. Because almost all of them tells me when they are doing the mock interview, when they're looking at that, they will just using that as a feedback. So they're making them more confident, but they never really rely on the answer as the final answer. But what they really like it is that after a very intense interview, they always want to look back to looking at what the note tells them.
Sure.
How well you did. You should say this thing in a different way.
Like a coach.
Yes.
Okay.
So it will tells you, like you did very well on this dimension, problem solving, but your communication can be improved. And then you said this story using this language. Maybe you should rephrase it, telling it this way. So they basically love that. And then they feel like, every time when they're going back, they just feel like, it's such a very important moment in their job searching. Every interview was so important to them. And then now they have something they can go back and keep looking at, and then improve. So I think that's one of their favorite feature among our team.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I would be interested to know what like professors maybe of like the Haas school would think. I think do you plan on doing more sort of like research on that, more like surveying people? I don't know what your plans are for that.
Yeah, I mean we don't really have any plan to talking to professors, because I felt there's definitely a theoretical discussion among the two, and everyone has some projection of where AI will be, right?
Sure.
Some people will be feeling AI just will be completely replace human, and then there's also people feels like AI is so dumb it's almost useless except correcting.
Right, two different extremes, right? Like it's very binary.
It's just like to me it's just a technical tool, and then there's a lot of nuances, right? It's probably 80% of the things it will be done by the tool, and then there's still left in the 20% of the work to be done by human. And there's this famous saying principle I really like is that any job that is half done is not done. It's not replaced, right? So it's only half done. So I think there's still a huge part of the job for the candidate. So our focus right now is really trying to letting more people use it, and then to show it's really useful. It's not like it's not like a calculator. It has a correct answer because there's no answer. It's a correct answer for an interview question. Right? There's only better answer. So what we are trying to show people is that this is really useful for you to come up with the best answer you have, and for you to keep improving. So that's what we are focusing right now. And I think once we have enough people using this and gain success, there is worth to have a more bigger conversation with company. And I think companies are already thinking about this. I know Facebook internally is discussing that. There are several big companies already internally have a lot of discussion about the use.
I was going to ask you because obviously from my perspective, I can imagine that a lot of undergraduate students, freshly graduated students, folks who are interviewees, they want to have like a tool, and I'm sure like the feedback is really helpful. But I know a large component of this, like in terms of like the ethical discussion, is the real time responses. But I guess, like, do you think that the employers would get on? I mean, you said that you worked at Google and Snapchat, and I'm wondering, like, have you had a discussion with them, what they might think about it? Like, I know it might take more time for employers to get on board with this. And we talked a little bit about that already, but I'm wondering if you, personally went and spoke with some ex-colleagues at Google or Snapchat about this.
Yeah, we're actually working. Frankly, we're working very closely with this large language model providers. Internally, they are super excited to helping me building the product. They are letting me try new models, and then they're curious about my benchmark evaluation. So a big part of the internal is super excited about the new applications I'm building. I mean, there's definitely a thinking reflection over the hiring process. But I think that reflection on the hiring process is not like everyone thinks, is there's one person feels, no, this is cheating, let's not do it. It's more like an internal discussion. Do you feel like, it changes your decision, right? I think that will take years to settle when people see more data and when people correlate that data with the new hire performance, right? And then to study about how they should treat it. And I think it's an evolving field. I don't think at this point anyone has an answer. Everyone has, like I have already shared a lot of the things I talk and hear from different, like parties and different people, and it's mixed. Some people, like having this opinion, but I don't think the company has a clear stand from anyone I have talked to. It's more like people are trying to face the trend and deal with the trend. And like we got a lot of support from all these tech companies, like, hey, try our model. We have a new model specifically trained for this type of
it's really helpful for you then, isn't it? I'm wondering, well, so we've talked about, like a lot of companies that are based in America, but have you thought about, the sort of wide scale application of this? Have you spoken to, I know you're originally from China, like, do you foresee this being a big part of the workforce in China or like other countries, or have you done any research there yet?
We are definitely working for South Asia market right now. So China, India, and some part of other South Asia, like ground. And people there are actually more open to this technology comparing to U.S. school. I think there's probably different reasons. I mean, if you're looking at the international market, people are more practical. I mean, at least if you're looking at South Asia, people are more practical. They will just say who can compete, who can win the competition. And it's more easy to just show them this is working. And there's a lot of people trying that out. And in US, and especially in US universities, I think there's a very strong ethical conversation, since ChatGPT, the use in school has been, like a big topic, I think, for these 2 years or recent years as well. I think that's where the communication mostly focusing around. Like, is this an ethical use? Should people using it? But I feel like eventually the tech will prove itself. That's my personal belief.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so you're focused on, it sounds like, a couple of different
Yeah.
markets across the.
Yeah, I think remote is, so there's probably I would say there's two trends. One trend is that there's a lot of work shifting remote. So this is
especially over COVID, that was the big thing, right?
I think right now it's still the case.
Oh, a lot of it is stuck. I mean, for folks in the tech world.
So that remote shifting means knowledge worker are a lot of knowledge worker are outsourced to international market. So I think this is a great add-on to that market. But that also creating another trend is that a lot of college students in US was trained as knowledge workers, right? They haven't been trained with real job skill like needed,
Right. That's actually a really interesting point, because I was looking online a couple of days ago and I saw a study done. I think it was done by Intelligence Today, intelligence.com. Intelligence.com it was.
Yeah.
And they said, they'd done a couple of surveys and they had found that 6 in 10 employers said that they would be very reluctant to hire a Gen Z employee again. They had fired them after, just working there for under a year. This was this year. And so they said that, a lot of them are underqualified. They, see them as being lazy. So I'm wondering if, do you think your platform will sort of help this issue, or do you think it could worsen it? Because, I mean, that's the big thing, right? Like, everyone's talking about, are we qualified applicants? Is the next generation, those who are going to enter the workforce, are they qualified enough? Because right now we're seeing not so much.
I do feel this is why I'm focusing on universities right now. I do feel AI will definitely giving new grads an edge that's not existing. Probably is losing in the current trend, because if you're looking at a lot of companies needs a lot of knowledge workers, and those workers are getting cheaper and cheaper if they're looking broad, right? So you could hire a fairly good coder or front-end engineer in India at 1/5 of the cost of hiring locally, right? So companies will shifting to India, right? To hire engineers there. But the thing is that those works can be also easily done by ChatGPT as well. So if you're thinking about that, so do you want to find the people who has a more, who understand how to using AI to achieve a better work? Or do you feel I just want to outsourcing this work to India, right? So I feel if the Gen Z, I don't know if I would say Gen Z is lazy. I would say, my understanding, I work with a lot of Gen Z students, like in my startup as well. And I feel they are more, they understand, they're taking more diversified informations, right? They know Instagram, they know TikTok, they know how to research. They have so many different kind of priorities they are focusing on. So I feel like they are more good at synthesizing input and producing something that's like more out of your expectation, or more creative, comparing to when I was in school. Most of the training is about, do you know the answer to these specific questions? But I think that skill set nowadays, I think it's valued less and less. Both giving the trend of remote worker and also giving the trend of AI.
So you think that we are Gen Z, I can speak for myself at least. Do you kind of see it as AI is growing and we're sort of growing along with it? Yeah.
I definitely think so. I feel it's,
and the perspective is sort of shifting, instead of like yes or no, right or wrong, to creative, open-ended sort of approaches.
Yes. So it's more like that's where I see the critical thinking is happening, right? It's not about the hard work where you go there digging out, processing some dirty data for like 5 hours straight, right? It's more like you crafting the best prompt.
Right. Because a lot of the yes or no answers can just be done by AI.
Yeah. So it's like, so now how do we judging a person's skill? It's less about, can this person sitting here quietly, clean up data for 5 hours? It's more like, does he has a, like a scalable approach to using AI to do this while also ensuring quality. Right.
And so you think that your platform kind of assists with that?
We are a training tool. So I think it's a training tool for you to at least getting the first opportunity.
Yeah. Right. Just get your foot in the door. Yeah, I kind of want to just transition a little bit because we've talked throughout the course of this dialogue that, you worked at Snapchat and Google, and
Yeah.
I'm sort of wondering like what was sort of the impetus for you moving from, big corporate, companies to startups? Like how was that for you, and what sort of drove you to do that?
Yeah, I felt that's where like my personal journey is that I grew up in Asian, culture, right? In the Asian culture, you were mostly trained or educated to follow the rule and to just compete, right?
Sure.
Like, hey, you need to win this, like mathematics competition, and you need to be good academically. And I think I have been gradually, like growing up with this mentality. I'm winning competition, but design the competition,
Sure.
like over the years. And the more and more I'm doing it, the more I realizing the world is changing in a very different way, because I think it's more about what are the new ideas, like what are the things that will really changing people's life. And I think I kind of getting much older, like to my current age, I started realizing, like that is really valuable, and I started letting myself go for that direction. I think my journey is more in good academically climbing up, going to the top company, and then gradually to going down to smaller, better companies, the smaller ones, and to completely doing it myself.
Yeah, no, well, I could argue that you're using the knowledge that you sort of built up, over time, and you're applying it to something that you're passionate about. You're very clearly passionate about this, so I think it's really like fascinating, and like I guess I'm wondering, because you have such an entrepreneurial mindset. Do you have any like advice for students, at USC and at other universities, who want to move into the startup space? Do you sort of recommend that they go and work for bigger companies and like, practice their knowledge, put it in action, real world applications and whatnot, and then transition to startups? Or do you think if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should just go for it?
I felt like whatever you want to do is you should just go for it. I felt that's my overall takeaway. And I do feel your first job or first thing you do will be defining your following careers. Has a big weight in your future career.
Sure.
So I think the first job who you are working with are super important.
Sure.
As well. I do think nowadays. Just my observation, I think big companies are hiring less and less. They are also hiring less and less new grads, from what I have seen.
Yes.
That's where the stress in the job market right now. That's why we want to help students.
Sure.
And I think this is a great time to working on startups, and it would feel very hard to believe. So when I was younger, web is starting, and a lot of people think computer science doesn't really have a big future, right? It's like software is going to India, right? No one wants to work on that. And then soon, it's mobile time. People feel, oh, this is thing. Like, no one is going to using this. It's like very dumb. I miss the keyboard time. So every time like people are seeing this, but you just realizing 5 years later, these startups building on top of a new technology wave is going to dominate in the market.
Sure. I even learned about that in my economics class a year ago. Econ 351 in Marshall. Anybody? It's a good class. I learned that, the first sort of response to innovation is to question, and then to deny, and then eventually to accept, right? You just have to kind of embrace innovation over time, especially if, it's significantly changing the environment. But yeah, so I guess for the startup sort of scene, like, do you have any recommendations for people specifically about getting into it, breaking into tech, that sort of thing? Because you clearly did it.
Yeah, I think joining startup is actually less challenging comparing to applying for big companies. I think a big company is more like applying for Ivy School or like applying for USC. It's a very standard process, and you have to compete your ass off,
Right.
Like to do the exact
True.
same thing everyone else is doing, right? And also there's a lot of luckiness, like luck, behind the scene.
Sure.
But doing startup is a lot more about determination, right? It's like, are you passionate? Do you?
Yeah, that's put to the test because I know that a lot of startups, especially early stage, they have to work around the clock. Like they get in there,
Yeah.
Fairly early, and then they work sometimes late into the night. And
I feel like like that's a misunderstanding actually, in my opinion. Like
really,
people think the life in big companies is like laying there, like enjoying like 9 to 5, working hour. But for most,
they work very hard as well.
Yeah, because big companies are working super hard. The only thing is that you're working the work itself is different. So if you're working in a big company, it's already established. So there's a lot of process. So you are working in the process, and you're trying to navigate the process.
Sure.
And then you're working very, very hard under the rank, within a rank. And then, you're working long hours, especially for junior people. So it's not like where you could rest and then just waiting for retirement. And I don't think that is even exist, down the road.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So now I think for startup is that you're working similar hours, as you work at a big company, but it just, the topic is not planned. So everything is, happened as it happens. And there's always something new to changing your perspective.
It's exciting.
Yeah. So
right.
you just need to be nimble and you just to be flexible and learning on the spot. And I do think nowadays we are at a very unique historical moment. Especially if you're working in tech for long, you will know this is a very unique pivoting moment that there's abundant technology on the table right now. And then you will just start to see everything changing.
Yeah, we're sort of at an inflection point, right?
It's
we just
very big inflection
kind
point.
of deviated, and we're just kind of rolling with it, and we're trying to, manage our response to it, and make sure that everything is smooth sailing, but it not always is. Right?
But it's a wave. If you're jumping on it, you probably will win big for your life. So I always feel this is an opportunity, and this opportunity, it just depends on who feels like they're motivated to grab it.
Sure.
And that will always show the case. It's the same case every time. I mean, like now we're looking back, we feel how could people don't realizing mobile is going to be the future, right? How could people don't realize the internet is going to be the future? But when I grew up, most people don't believe so.
Yeah. Things change, right? Times.
In 2011, I was at Google, right? And then I think the founder is Larry Page at the moment. He told everyone. In 2012, he was saying mobile first. And then in 2013, he changed his words, like mobile only. Right? At that company, like at that time, people are still arguing.
Sure.
Right? People still saying, no, like we still have more traffic on desktop.
Right.
Like
There's still pushback.
Yeah.
It all comes back to what I told you about my econ class. Here you go.
Yeah, like that's inside where mobile happened, right? Where Android was built, right? Inside that place, people are arguing back. Sure. And imagine how this world is, like reflecting to that. But nowadays, you're looking back. If you can go back in time in 2011, what are you going to do? You're going to building a mobile app.
Yeah.
If you have a time machine right now.
Right.
Building a mobile app.
Right. Speaking of building things, besides this startup that you've been working on for how long has it been? We said took you a few months to do, but you founded it maybe a couple of years ago?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other projects that you're working on besides Synco AI?
Oh, we build a lot. We probably like more than 10 products, we try very different things. The one thing, this morning I was discussing, actually meeting an investor before
really?
I come here. So we were chatting.
Thank you for coming here.
So we were chatting about it, and we think a lot of people misunderstand how product happened. So a lot of the greatest product in our lifetime is never a well thought or well planned idea.
Sure.
It's a lot of random ideas or intuitions thrown into a lot of experiments.
Some of the best songs, right? Like they've just been kind of sitting there like, this sounds good, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of comes to you.
And when you're looking back, you feel like, oh, that worked.
Yeah.
And then you start to reflect why it worked.
Right.
I think that's the same thing for Snapchat. We probably launched hundreds of ideas at Snapchat. And then when you're looking back, there's only one or two really creating a lasting impact for people
Right.
remember what Snapchat is.
And then you have to study those sort of results, right? Like, how did this kind of lead to such success?
But when it happened, it's just so random.
Right.
It's like, someone was talking during lunch saying, hey, did you see that? Like, we should be building this. And you were like, let's building this.
Right. It's crazy to think about that these things kind of just come to people and, you don't really think much of it. And then a few months later, you're reflecting and you're like, oh, that did work. That did definitely work. And people are liking it and people are, enjoying their time on the platform. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of times, like I feel when we are building product, we don't overthink. We
don't overthink it.
We try to not overthink. We're trying to think about one thing is that do we think this will create value for people, right? And then do we see the perspective?
Sure.
And then we'll build the product, and then we'll bring it to the people. And then if people, like if the first person or first few people we showed, after they use it, they cannot go back.
Yeah. Do you think that, your guiding, North Star should be always customer value and, fulfilling and, just basically just filling that niche of like, how do I make somebody's life easier? Do you think that that's sort of what you use when you go on and venture off into building products? Or do you think that sometimes like ideas will come to you and you don't really think about the specific customer need and that comes later? Or do you it's like the chicken or the egg type of situation?
I think that's a chicken egg type of situation. I feel a lot of times we were more like, is this fun to building this thing?
Is it fun? Okay, yeah. I like the honesty. Is it fun to build?
It's like, it's a bunch of smart people, like everyone is very, so first you're finding a team who you feel like they're smart and you want to be with them. And then once you be with them, you trust your intuition, right?
Sure.
You throw the idea onto the, like into the room. And if everyone feels like that's so cool, and then you just go for it.
Just go for it.
Yeah, as far as someone feels like this is so cool, you just go for it.
And then I guess you can sort of tailor, you can take your fun idea and then you can tailor it to be, okay, how is this actually going to help people now? How can I make it actually, provide customer quality and value?
Actually, people will soon trying to using that to justify whatever ideas.
Got it. Okay, so maybe take what I'm saying with a grain of salt.
Yeah, once you feel it's cool, then you're saying, like that person has this problem. We can go for it.
Right.
I feel that is becoming, we were educated in that way. So people thinking that way. But I feel if you want to jump into something really risky, feel fun and feel excited, at least from my personal experience, is where it's the start. And once you get there, and you can always go there, talking to customers, shaping your ideas, as it goes. But the initial passion.
So as someone who's so well experienced in AI, you've been sort of working with AI for, it sounds like, quite a while now. Do you have any sort of like last advice that you would give to, young people out there who are breaking into tech and, our whole club, Shift SC, who I'm representing right now currently, our whole mission is to have AI have sort of like safeguards tech ethics, these sort of big ideas, right? Making sure that tech and AI is responsible. So do you have any advice to young people who are going to enter the industry on how to ensure that, yes, we are being innovative and we're, building products that are going to serve people well, benefit humanity overall, but still we're going to do it in a responsible way? Do you have any advice for those people?
I think my personal best learning is that just don't trust any other people what other people told you. Just do it yourself. Just try it yourself.
Sure.
Just build it. Because I have been working in AI since I graduated. Like I was here as the AI lab at ISI, and all the things we believed at that time turned out to be wrong. Like some of the things, at least a lot of the technology trend we were predicting was wrong, and then it just keep being reshaped or changed as things are really moving forward, right? So everyone is making mistakes and adapt and learn, and then making new effort. So the best way I could say, what we understand about AI today was so different than we understand about it a year ago or 2 years ago. So the best way to learn AI or be living in this modern era is not trusting what other people told you. Just to go and build it yourself, right? And once you get into use it and build it, you will have your own opinion. And it's our collective decisions.
Sure.
We are shifting where this technology is going. Instead of trusting some one person's review.
Right. Don't take anything at face value. You have to kind of do the
Yes.
actual digging and
Yes.
work yourself.
Exactly. That's my best learning is just to try it.
Well, thank you for the advice. And I will definitely apply that to my life as well.
Yeah.
I think we could all, benefit from, taking initiative and making sure that in order for things to be the way we want them to be, or at least in order to minimize consequences in life, we should just do it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking with me. We always welcome you back to USC anytime you want to come on over. We're here. And best of luck to you with Synco AI and any other ventures. And we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. From Studio A at the USC Annenberg School, this was Aadi Weber, your host from the Paradigm Podcast. We currently publish our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. If you enjoyed our conversation, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you all for listening.